Hello, everyone. This is the Mind of Lilith, and thank you for joining me today. I wanted to discuss this interview or podcast that Cam Newton did with Dr. Cheyenne Bryant a couple of weeks ago. I haven't had time to look over it, but here we are today. So I watched the whole 200 and something hour presentation at 1.25 speed because I really did not want to hear what Cam Newton had to say. And around the 15-20 minute mark, my brain started to get hot. And I felt like I was watching or listening to some sort of psychological hydra. So a hydra is a big monster with many different heads. And when you cut one of the heads off of the hydra, another head or several heads grow in its place because you're not getting to the root of the problem. So Dr. Cheyenne Bryant made some very great points that I've discussed on my channel in the past. Cam Newton seemed a little bit defensive, in my opinion, especially when he realized that he was not Dr. Cheyenne's type, not because of his height, not because of his looks, not because of his money, not because of anything else, but the fact that he had 8 children. I believe that Cam Newton is used to women fawning over him because he is a former NFL player with the height, the money, the stature that many of the low-functioning, low-value, low-vibration women are attracted to. Now, I'm going to say this. My brain started getting hot because I felt like the conversation wasn't going anywhere and we weren't getting to the root of the problem. And this conversation I'm going to have with you guys kind of ties into what I wanted to discuss with Rich Homie Kwan's death that happened a couple days ago. Okay? And this conversation is about culture. You guys know I've discussed culture on my channel before. Culture is very important to me. It is the most important thing that we have to address in our community today. So, at some point in the conversation, Cam Newton and Dr. Bryant were talking about high value versus high functioning. High value meaning, somebody with resources, money, tangible assets. And high functioning meaning someone with emotional intelligence, someone with a good personality, good character, so on and so forth, right? And what I couldn't help but to notice during this conversation is that we had 2 high value people in the same room, both attractive, around the same age, but neither of them were happy with what they had. Neither of them were happy, like really, really happy and fulfilled with what they currently had. Dr. Cheyenne wants marriage and children. She's not married and doesn't have any kids. Cam Newton wants to have more kids, and I don't know whether he wants to get married or not, but there's something going on with him where he's sabotaging his relationships. There's a possibility that Cam Newton gets women pregnant so that they can become dependent on him. And then once the baby is born, the mother kind of shifts her focus to the baby. He gets jealous and insecure and sabotages the connection. At one point, Cam Newton got one of his baby mothers pregnant while another one was pregnant. So he had 2 women pregnant at the same exact time. And I think that Cam Newton may have some sort of attachment disorder. I haven't looked at his natal chart yet, but you cannot tell me that you grew up in this healthy, happy, wholesome home with 2 married parents for your whole life and you're burning down the village with your penis. This doesn't make any sense to me. Something happened in his childhood that he's running away from, and he's using sex with women to do this. Now, back to the conversation. At some point, they have a discussion about the low functioning versus high value, and Dr. Cheyenne and Cam Newton are both unhappy. Why are they both unhappy? And I'm not saying that they don't have happiness as far as a career and their money, but again, wanting children and marriage is a pretty big deal, right? And for Cam Newton, his fear of commitment, his fear of divorce, or his fear of intimacy outside of sex is a really big issue because now he's being sloppy and irresponsible and reckless with his situations. So I believe the reason why they're both in the same position, unhappy and unfulfilled, because the culture of the Black community is not conducive to happy, wholesome, healthy relationships that lead to marriage. At the beginning of the conversation, Cam Newton said something to the effect of his mother told him that it's easy to find someone to go to heaven with you, but it's almost impossible or hard to find someone who's willing to go to hell with you. I don't mind hell, but I don't want to live in hell. I don't want to live in hell. I'll visit hell occasionally. I'll bring a gift basket. I'll say hi to some people who belong down there and should be there forever. But I don't want to live in hell with you as a woman. I want to know when there's an exit. When will this be over? I don't want to live in hell in perpetuity because you refuse to deal with your issues. And now you can use our relationship or my feelings for you or our connection to justify not doing any work. This is when men or women say, you know what it is, you knew what it was, which means I have no intention of changing. So I'm going to guilt you into staying by saying that you're not a ride or die. And, you don't love me, you're not loyal to me, you don't really love me. You don't love me enough to suffer in hell with me in perpetuity. Again, there has to be some objective here. There has to be some sort of endpoint. There has to be a deadline. Okay, how long are we going to be in hell together? 2 years? 6 months? And I'd rather the hell be, for example, something that we can manage together, right? Somebody dies in the family, sickness, illness, unemployment, financial issues. I don't want to deal with the hell of some other person coming into that relationship that you want to deal with, and I don't know when that situation is going to stop. So now I have to wait 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years before you end this relationship. I'm not dealing with that. I'd rather deal with a hellish situation that we can manage together as a couple. I can't manage your feelings for somebody else as a couple. I can't manage this side piece that you have fallen in love with or lust with or that you have created a soul tie with. I can't manage her feelings. I don't know what she's going to do. I don't know how long I'm going to be in hell with you in this situation. So it's not a matter of, women don't want to suffer for men. Women just want the high life. There are lots of women who have experienced struggle love for many, many years and only ended up with autoimmune issues, STDs, side babies, and a broken heart. Most women don't want to deal with that. We want to know that if I'm suffering, it's because we're suffering together. I'm not going to be suffering in hell while you're out running the streets and you're enjoying yourself. Why would you stop then? Now I'm going to stay in hell because you're not going to stop cheating, because you're enjoying the hell you're putting me in. So because you don't love yourself and you don't value yourself, you need to run the streets like a whore, a man whore, right? And I'm stuck here trying to figure things out on my own while you don't think you have to change because you're getting everything you want. You have created the hell that you want to live in. I don't want to live there with you. I want to visit once in a while because sometimes you can find yourself in hell. Hell is a good place to find yourself if you've lost yourself, if you don't know where you're going in life, if you have a lot of unresolved trauma. You can find your way to heaven or to enlightenment through hellish experiences. Hell can be a purifying experience. You discover who you really are. But I'm not trying to go to hell for entertainment. A lot of these men have messed up, warped minds, so they live in hell 24/7. And then they create an environment, a situation that matches that inner dynamic. I don't want to live there. Now, having a polygamous situation is not necessarily hell if all people are in agreement about what is expected of them, what the objectives are, who does what, and so on and so forth. But that's not what Cam Newton is doing. Cam Newton is having overlapping sexual relationships with women who are very beautiful, who are preferences, who are willing to have his children, but he's not willing to commit to them because he wants to maintain all of the power in those relationships. And you can tell he got triggered by Dr. Bryant because he had no power over her. She doesn't need him for anything. She has her own money. She's attractive, no kids. She doesn't see herself as beneath him. Cam Newton fucks with women who he thinks are beneath him, who need him for money, resources, clout, status, penis. Women who don't have much going for themselves. Dr. Bryant is successful in her own right, and she's beautiful. So he's not considered high value to her. That offended him. Now, again, back to the culture point. If your culture is not conducive to family, community, loving relationships, creating productive citizens, then you have no value no matter how much money you have. Your culture is your adornment. It's your crown. It's your throne. It's your pedestal, right? And if you don't have culture, you are a buck-naked, muscular man running through the wild with Balenciaga sneakers and a top hat. You are considered a wild animal with money. Why? Because your culture is a part of your social status. You can't call yourself a high-value person with social status if you don't have a culture. Your culture is a soil that nurtures your social status. So if you come from a culture of dysfunction, of broken homes, of irresponsibility, immaturity, and recklessness, and plantation buck behavior, it doesn't matter how much money you have. Not only will you not value yourself, you won't value what the women and the men in your community have to offer because the culture that they have been cultivated in is not conducive to wholesome, healthy, holistic partnerships. So Dr. Cheyenne Bryant was correct, but so was Cam Newton. Yes, if you have a lot of money, you do have more value than people who don't have as much money, but you still don't have any value. if that makes sense. Compared to, for example, I know plenty of Jewish people, men in particular, who are not that attractive. And they have an average salary, but they're married to beautiful Jewish women. I'm not saying the marriages are perfect, but their culture is conducive to healthy, happy relationships, no matter how much money they have. It makes no sense for two attractive people who are young and healthy, who have high value, to not have healthy relationships. Doesn't matter how many permutations and configurations you put on the ship. The fact of the matter is this: if you have no culture, you have no social status, and thus you have no value. Or if your culture is associated with dysfunction, then your value is also being determined by that. This is why a passport bro will marry a flat booty Becky or a flat booty Japanese woman, because he's in love with her culture. Your culture as a woman is your crown and glory, not just your hair weave. Your culture represents the most elevated aspects of your femininity, your beauty, right? Your hairstyles, your clothing, your dress, your customs, your history, your cultural narrative, the investment you have in your children, in your family, in each other, in your community. If you're not even making an investment in each other as partners or your own children, if you're not investing in your own children, it always goes back to the kids. You have absolutely no culture. Back in the day, we had mama's boys. Remember mama's boys? We still have mama's boys. Mama's boys were men who pretty much put their mother's needs above all the women that they encountered in the world, because they love their mother that much, for better or worse, right? I don't have an issue with mama's boys if the mother is a healthy, functional, non-competitive, not male-identified woman. If you're a male-identified woman, then you would be a really bad mother-in-law for the most part. Male-identified women tend to raise dysfunctional, toxic, abusive men because they have like this emotional incest situation going on. They get jealous of other girls who are dating their sons. They treat their sons like babies or their husbands or their boyfriends. So if you're a male-identified woman, more likely you're not a good mother for sons, period. We need to get back to the days where there were mothers and fathers in a home, and you had the mama's boy and the daddy's little girl. The mama's boy will look for the qualities of their mother in their partner, okay? Not the stripper, not the whore, not the whatever she is on the streets. He will look for the qualities of his mother in his partner. If she's a good mother who's healthy, who's supportive, who has boundaries, right? Who has self-respect, who's not jealous, then he'll be a wonderful husband. If she's a toxic mother who's jealous, bitter, insecure because she doesn't have a husband and you're about to get married to her son and now she's comparing her life to you, then that's going to be a nightmare. So a lot of this rests on the type of women and men that we are raising. What's also very interesting is that Cam Newton and Dr. Bryant are both very attractive, high value financially, but Cam comes from a two-parent household and Dr. Bryant comes from a single-parent household, and the outcomes are still the same. We're not happy where we are. Neither of us are married. So it's not about the money and your functionality necessarily. Your functionality determines your value. Your values are determined by how you function, right? If you're a high-functioning person, more than likely you'll have some sort of high value as far as your ability to manage your emotions, to get things done, your conflict resolution skills, and so on and so forth. A lot of times those skill sets don't translate to relationships because you don't value the person that you are involved with. And you don't value the person that you're involved with because the person comes from a culture of devaluation. You have two beautiful people who come in great packages, but on the inside they're broken. And it's not because they're stupid or diseased or dumb or broke. It is because they come from a culture of dysfunction. So Dr. Cheyenne Bryant, unfortunately, she has to choose from men who were born into a culture that did not value marriage, relationships, family, children, community, sacrifice, discipline, anything. So it doesn't matter who she ends up with. And I'm not saying that she can't find somebody who has her qualities. But when she mentioned that she would date somebody in her 20s, it sounded like she was willing to raise a man up to her standards. I got to raise you like your mother. Why else would a 27-year-old man date a 41, 42-year-old woman unless she's there to raise him? So now I have to raise you to be the man I want you to be. Even though she said it's not a good thing, you can't do that. That's what essentially she's trying to do if you get with a 27, 28-year-old man who doesn't really know himself yet. Most men don't grow up until they're 35, 40 years old because you have a culture that is conducive to irresponsible, immature, sophomoric, wayward, dysfunctional, escapist behavior. So from a bird's eye view, it does not matter if you're high functioning and or you're high value. That don't matter. because the soil is fucked up. And what is the soil? Your culture. It is not Dr. Cheyenne's fault. It is not Cam Newton's fault. This is 40 to 50 years of neglect by the older generations who did not transfer the culture, their history, their knowledge, their values onto the next generation. When you have cultural values, this is your social contract with not only yourself, but with your family, your community, and the world at large. When you have culture, people know where you stand on certain issues, politically, economically, socially, spiritually. If you have no culture, you're considered a wild animal in the world because you're seen as someone who's identifying with values and traditions and customs that are not conducive to the evolution and advancement of humanity. This is why we have culture wars. Who has the best culture? And whose culture are the women the most attractive, right? Because Asian women are not more attractive than white women. White women are not more attractive than Hispanic women. Hispanic women are not more attractive than black. It's all a cultural issue. So when a man sees a woman, he sees her culture first. He don't see her ass first. He don't see her titties first. No. On a subconscious level, he sees her culture first. He sees her status first. Because now he knows his status relative to hers. This is why a man who's low functioning or low value won't step to a woman who has her stuff together. Because he's comparing his status to her automatically. I'm not saying it never happens. It does happen. For the most part, men are more concerned about social status than women are. And your social status is determined by your culture. So again, if you don't know how to pick a partner, you don't know how to pick a man for your children, you don't know how to pick a husband, you don't know how to have healthy interpersonal relationships where both people have a shared goal and purpose, then you're going to have the chaos and confusion you have today. A bunch of people with brand names and, designer bags and shoes and clothes and cars. The culture is now whatever brand you're wearing that month, whatever's in style, right? In the capitalist system, whatever political party you're voting for. That is the culture that we're talking about. And because that culture is transactional, it's transient, it's impermanent, it's superficial, then you're going to have superficial standards and values for the people that you choose to partner with. It's as simple as that. This whole convoluted conversation about this versus that, listen, bottom line of it is this. You're not going to get married if you come from a culture where marriage is not valued. And if you do get married in a culture where marriage isn't valued, you're going to have a struggle relationship. You're going to be in hell with your husband or your wife until they figure out, I don't want to be here anymore. I want to be happy and healthy. I don't want to have a drug problem anymore. I don't want to be messing with hoes anymore. I want to have a healthy two-party relationship with just me and you. Or in a polygamous situation, I want to have a relationship that's conducive to building a tribe, a community, a network, a system, a legacy that extends beyond me, right? So Cam Newton takes for granted that he'll always be high value no matter what he does. He's extremely spoiled and very arrogant. So it doesn't matter where I put my gooeyed up penis. I can put it in the middle of a room, just shoot sperm into the air, and I'll still have high value. That's how he sees himself. He sees himself as a plantation buck, whether he knows it or not. So his value has always been predicated upon his athleticism, his looks, his height. And so that's how he navigates through the world. I kept dying laughing when Cam tried to sound intellectual with the dreads coming out of his hat. I'm like, what are we doing right now? I'm not saying that you can't look goofy and be smart, because I'm very goofy and I look goofy sometimes too. So it is what it is. But you can't make goofy ass decisions and wear goofy ass clothes and think that people are going to take you seriously when it comes to discussing relationships. At one point, Cam Newton said, if you're single, then you should have no opinion about couples or married people. Listen, the last time I checked, a single person was still a human being. Married people or people in relationships are not a different species. You're not a different species because you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a wife or husband. You're not. So I can look with my own two eyeballs, even though I'm single, and see this is some bullshit. What Cam Newton meant to say with that statement is that a lot of people in couples will put up with bullshit that many single people will not. A lot of single people have stronger boundaries than some people in relationships. Not all people, but some people in relationships have very low standards. Listen, I remember watching My 600-Pound Life. It was a woman who was 1,000 pounds, and she had like a lump on her forehead. It was her and her sister, and they both had boyfriends and husbands. And someone in the comment section said they both got a boyfriend, and I can't even get a text back. And I responded to that person, would you date the man that she's dating? No, you would not, right? And that brings me to Dr. Cheyenne's point about comparing your life and yourself and your value to other people. I want what she has, or I want what he has, right? I want to have that type of relationship. And then you have projection, because that's not the reality of who you really are. You may like the way things look on the outside, but if you are in that same dynamic, things may not look the same way. For example, me, I'm a very independent person. I do value relationships in and of themselves, right? But I'm the kind of person that needs my freedom. I don't mean to go out and have a bunch of different partners. I mean, I need to have the freedom to grow and expand and explore the world without worrying about how my personal evolution and my personal spiritual journey is going to affect someone's feelings, right? Do you guys remember a couple of weeks ago in the Braxtons, Trina talked about how she could not fully mourn the death of her ex-husband because it was going to offend her current husband. Shit like that. I need to be able to go through my whole human experience without worrying about your feelings getting hurt. That does not mean I want to have sex with a bunch of men. It means that my growth and development should not stop or be stunted by our relationship, because I'm going to grow and develop independently of you regardless, right? We all have different natal charts in astrology. So my experiences will not be exactly like your experiences. We're coming together to exchange energies and to learn and grow from each other. But I also have my own individual journey that I don't want to be obstructed by your feelings and your ego and your insecurity. That's what I mean. But some people may say, no, you're supposed to grow with your partner. We're here together, all this other mess. I can't deal with that. But I've seen couples that are very, very enmeshed in each other. And I'm like, okay, that looks cool. They look happy together. But I don't want that for myself. And so what Dr. Cheyenne Bryant was saying is that a lot of people want what other people have. That's why they say comparison is the thief of joy. And I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, last week, when I talked about LilithMind Huntsville, how the cast members who went on this girl trip were upset about the rooms that they were in, because compared to the other rooms in the villa, they weren't as big or as scenic as the other rooms. So they couldn't even enjoy the fact that they were in a beautiful island, away from the kids, away from responsibilities, with other women. And all they cared about was, oh, she got this, I don't have that. So that is why a lot of women get caught up in these effed up relationships, and they can't leave those relationships because they're worried about somebody else getting their man, even though their man has them living in hell with him for how many years with his issues. So that is what it is. So yeah, long story short, because I don't want to get into it. This conversation wasn't deep enough for me to unpack. The bottom line is this, okay? If you have no culture, or if your culture is dysfunctional, then you will not be able to have healthy, functional, happy, productive relationships. Doesn't matter how you look, doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter how functioning you are. If your values do not adhere to that, then it doesn't make a difference. This is one of the reasons why in the Deep South, there's still a traditional culture of marriage. So many women in the South get married before the age of 21, 22, 25. It's getting older now. But women in the Northeast, in the Midwest, on the West Coast, they don't get married like that, because the culture in these regions, in the Northeast, in the Midwest, in the West Coast, it's less family-oriented. Now we want to be identified with the brands that we wear. We want to be associated with the brands that we wear, the cars that we drive, right? Our career, right? And our social status. We want to be identified with that more than our own families. So if your family is fucked up, then it doesn't matter how much money you have, because the world will see you as less than. You won't have as much value. And there is a difference between having money and having value. You could have all the money in the world and don't value yourself or the people you're interacting with. So you'll squander it. You'll destroy it and yourself. So this is what Dr. Bryant was saying, low functioning, high functioning. Your functionality determines not only what you value, but how you acquire what you value and how you treat the things that you value. Money, people, cars, clothes, house, whatever the case may be. So yes, there is some sort of convergence or conflation between being a high functioning person and having high financial value. Those things do go together. There are a lot of people though who don't have a lot of money, who have great empathy, very compassionate, so on and so forth. But they have empathy and compassion because they value you as a human being. They respect you as a person. So now you can marry them because they value your humanity, not just how much money you have, but your intrinsic human worth, right? So I don't care how much money you have or how you look. I'm going to treat you like a human being with respect because I have a value for myself. And I'm going to treat you the way I want to be treated, no matter how much money I have. So I understand what Dr. Bryant was saying about the high functioning and high value situation, but you can have lots of money and still don't value yourself, which means you have no value. You have lots of money and be high functioning, meaning a lot of empathy for other people, supportive, nurturing, caring, but you don't value yourself. Whitney Houston's a perfect example of this. She had high value, and from what her friends and family would say about her, she was also high functioning, very nurturing, loving, warm, supportive, compassionate, generous, but she still ended up with Bobby Brown because she didn't value herself. And so Whitney Houston's self-esteem, or the way she valued herself, determined how she functioned. So you can have a lot of monetary value, you can have a lot of social value, you can have a lot of emotional intelligence, a lot of empathy, but if you do not love yourself or value yourself, it's still going to be the same outcome. Cam Newton does not love himself or value himself, which is why even though he has lots of money, he's low functioning. And to be quite honest, in many cases, not all the time, the way you value yourself is reflected in your financial situation, the way you manage your finances, because you have to value your money and respect it to manage your affairs, to manage your life. If you are throwing peanuts around hither and yon, you don't value your money either because these children cost money. So how can you be validated by something that you don't even value? How can you be validated or put on a pedestal for something that you don't even respect, which is your money? Your money is good for getting what you want for transactional situations, but if you really valued it, then you would respect it and respect yourself. This is more so for Cam Newton and Dr. Bryant. I commend Dr. Bryant for doing all the work she has done to deal with her own issues. But sometimes she sounded like she was being a little bit preachy. I'm glad she checked Cam Newton about his desirability because he thought he was the man until he met somebody who doesn't really need him for anything. She's cute too. He got offended. He was trying to convince her to see him as an option, even though he had no intention of doing anything with her but probably getting her pregnant. So if she gave him a chance, it'd be the same outcome anyway. So when women decide to choose better, these men will try to find excuses to get you to give them another chance of consideration. Well, maybe this and maybe that. And then when you slip up, oh, you should have known better, right? You can't win for losing. So stay on your path, women. Do not pay attention to these men who don't know what they want. And they don't know what they want because they don't have a culture that gives them a sense of purpose. And that sense of purpose is connected to the past, the present, and the future. All these men care about is right now. A lot of women only care about right now too. Do you know who only cares about right now? Wild animals. Wild animals don't care about yesterday, and they damn sure barely care about tomorrow. All they care about is what is going on right now. And that is the state that the community is in. That's the state the culture's in. We don't plan for our grandchildren. Forget our children. We don't plan for our grandchildren. We don't honor our ancestors. We don't honor our own traditions. Our tradition is, what color Reeboks did you wear in 1992? What hairstyle did you have in 1997? What color tracksuit did you wear in 1984, right? All that bullshit. That has nothing to do with your contribution to the human collective as a whole. How are you advancing humanity forward? Your Jordans can't do that. Your weave can't do that. Your big ass can't do that. Your money can't do that either. So what values are you disseminating to your children that they can share with the collective, with the world? Who has the most attractive culture? It doesn't matter how the woman looks, right? Whose culture is attractive enough to convince a man to give up his freedom for his progeny? If your culture does not produce high-functioning men, women, and children, how much value does it really have? Because to be honest, economic or financial value is just a matter of circumstance. So Cam Newton and Dr. Cheyenne Bryant have economic value because they live in a country where those opportunities are available to them. Now, just because you have a culture that emphasizes the importance of marriage doesn't mean that the quality of those marriages is necessarily great. There are a lot of women who are in traditional marriages in different cultures and their husbands treat them like crap because that's the way the culture is set up, right? So in the Black community, not only are you going to be treated like crap, you're also not going to get married to the person who's treating you like crap. Quick sidebar. I also think Cam Newton got triggered when Dr. Bryant said that she would not consider a man who has kids. It's because Cam Newton does not want to look less desirable compared to other men. So he thinks that his height, his stature, his status automatically qualifies him as a high-value man. But Dr. Bryant is saying, compared to these other men who may be shorter than you or have less money than you, you're not even in the competition. You're not even in the running. And that bruised his ego. And this is, I think, also the reason why Cam Newton mentioned that he's in all his kids' lives and he's making the best out of the situation. Listen, a lot of women are tired of making the best out of a raggedy situation, okay? Because when someone says, I'm doing the best that I can, and they don't meet your standards, then they're asking you to settle, which means that they're asking you to fall in love with their potential, which is how things could be or should be or would be if only, if only, if only. And so these are the same men that keep telling women to choose better. And when Dr. Cheyenne says, well, I don't really want to deal with a man with kids because that's the better choice for me, he will try to hum and haw and convince her to see his potential because he's doing the best that he can, because he's a good father, he's a good man. But you have 8 children and 3 or 4 broken homes, and you want more kids but no marriage. Just because you're in a traditional relationship or a traditional culture, your relationships are emotionally healthy. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that whatever we have going on right now ain't working. And it ain't working because the soil has been poisoned. I'm going to discuss this in further detail when I post Rich Homie Quan's natal chart delineation. I'm going to try to get that out by Monday. But yeah, I mean, that's all I kind of have for this conversation. I don't know if there was any other topic you wanted me to discuss pertaining to this podcast. If so, leave the questions and comments in my comment section. I'll see if I can do a part 2. But low key, high key for me, this conversation is like beating a dead horse at this point. Because, again, it's a hydra. Nobody wants to take responsibility and accountability for their role in dysfunction. So now we have to identify the source of the problem. The source is the culture, period. Your culture is trash. Your culture is not conducive to healthy relationships. Your culture is conducive to fuckboy antics and irresponsible, reckless, and selfish behavior. It's as simple as that. So why would you get married? Marriage requires sacrifice, discipline, restraint, self-control, valuing your partner enough to sacrifice your personal animalistic desires to fortify the family, to fortify your legacy. Most Black men don't have that capacity. Most men don't in general. Now, also, Dr. Bryant discussed something that I talked about on this channel before about the fact that many women have fairy tale syndrome. They put these men on a pedestal. They see these men as their knight in armor and savior who's going to rescue them from the humdrum and the boredom of being a single woman, only for them to be disappointed when that man is a regular man with flaws and, inadequacies and insecurities and shortcomings. And then the woman wants to get a divorce because she married the potential, she married the ideal, she married the fairy tale. And that is 100% true. That is the woman's fault for doing that. But again, we are socialized into believing that there is a Prince Charming or a knight in shining armor, right? Young girls are socially conditioned to see their husbands or the men that they want to be with as princes, as kings, as gods, as these mystical men who can rescue them from their inadequacies and their insecurities. And that is not the case, to be fair to men. A lot of women choose wrong because they don't have healthy role models. Not their uncles, their fathers, their cousins, their brothers, their, members of the community. First, this doesn't matter. A lot of these men are very toxic, dysfunctional, and trash. And so what happens with the whole fairy tale Cinderella syndrome is that, these fairy tales put this beauty filter over these raggedy men who really have no value, and they're not high functioning either. They may look a certain way, and so the woman looks at their potential. Oh, they could be this or they could be that, but that's not who they truly are. They're showing you who they truly are, but because you're delusional and you want to believe in fairy tales and fantasies to avoid the responsibility of dealing with your own inadequacies and your own insecurities, which is why you've turned your husband into some sort of painkiller, right? We know a lot of women use men and relationships as their painkiller, which is why many of them believe that if they have a husband or a man, then they're automatically of high value compared to other women, that they're a whole different species of woman because they're now partnered with somebody. And so women have to also take accountability for their role in the dysfunction by way of pedestalizing these men and making these men whatever they want to be. And, I'm going to discuss this topic further in about a couple days. And I may address it in my Rich Homie Quan conversation because I'm also going to be discussing the impact of Neptune and Aries for cardinal sign. So, to be honest, I don't think the situation in the Black community will change as far as marriages and relationships until Black women restore, purify, and heal the culture that's been destroyed by the treachery of Black men. I'll discuss how that happened in my next commentary about Rich Homie Kwan. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Look forward to any feedback. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll speak to you soon.